Why do some animals only have a few offspring?
Females have a finite amount of energy that they can allocate to the growth and maintenance of offspring. Therefore, two basic strategies have evolved for successful reproduction. 1. Produce many small offspring, only some of whom may survive. Or 2. Produce just a few larger offspring, each with a higher likelihood of survival.
Who was the first primate taught to use sign language?
Although it was long known that primates use a number of methods of communication in the wild. Early attempts, from 1900 to the 1930s, to teach primates simple words were failures. A 1925 scientific article suggested sign language as an alternative to verbal language in communicating with primates. In the 1960s, researchers tried to teach chimps and gorillas a modified form of sign language. It began with Washoe the chimpanzee, followed by the gorillas Michael, now dead, and Coco. Washoe learned a little over 100 signs. But Coco has a working vocabulary of over 1,000 signs and understands about 2,000 words of spoken English.
How does alcohol affect cell function?
Alcohol causes varying effects on different cells. In general, alcohol increases tissue sensitivity to injury and prevents post-injury recovery. Alcohol stimulates brain cells by disrupting calcium channels within the cell membranes. It is thought that alcohol affects the fluidity of the membrane phospholipids. Alcohol also causes mitochondrial damage, depressed platelet function, decreased synthesis and transportation of proteins from the liver, and the activation of pancreatic enzymes that may subsequently damage the lining of the lung.
Who is considered the first histologist?
Marcello Malpighi, 1628 to 1694, is considered the first histologist. For his pioneering work in the science of microscopic anatomy. He used the newly developed tool of the time, the microscope, to examine living things including both plants and animals. His observations included that blood passed through the capillaries and extensive work on insect larvae.
What was the historical significance of hemp?
During the early years of colonial America, hemp, Agave cisalina, was as common as cotton is now. It was an easy crop to grow, requiring little water, no fertilizers, and no pesticides. The fabric looks and feels like linen. It was used for uniforms of soldiers, paper, The first two drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on hemp paper, and an all-purpose fabric. Betsy Ross's flag was made of red, white, and blue hemp.
What are chondrichthyes?
Chondrichthyes are fishes that have a cartilaginous skeleton rather than a bony skeleton. They include such organisms as sharks, skates, and rays.
What is the Gaia hypothesis?
The Gaia hypothesis, named for Gaia, the earth goddess of ancient Greece, is a controversial idea that the world is a single living organism that is capable of self-maintenance and regulation. It was first proposed by James Lovelock, 1919, and Lynn Margulis, 1938. In 1974, many scientists regard it as a useful analogy but a difficult theory to test scientifically.
What is the function of lysosomes?
Lysosomes are single, membrane-bound sacs that contain digestive enzymes. The digestive enzymes break down all the major classes of macromolecules including proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and nucleic acids throughout a cell's lifetime. The lysosomal enzymes digest old organelles to make room for newly formed organelles. The lysosomes allow cells to continually renew themselves and prevent the accumulation of cellular toxins.
What are the parts of a stem?
A stem has nodes and internodes. The nodes are the points where the leaves are attached to the stem. The internodes are the parts of the stem between the nodes.
How is the vertebrate brain organized?
The vertebrate brain is divided into three regions: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The size of each region of the brain varies from species to species. The hindbrain may be considered an extension of the spinal cord. Hence, it is often described as the most primitive portion of the brain. The primary function of the hindbrain is to coordinate motor reflexes. The midbrain is responsible for processing visual information. The forebrain is the center for processing sensory information in fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals.
Which insect has the best sense of smell?
Giant male silk moths, Bombyx mori, may have the best sense of smell in the world. Their antennae are covered with about 65,000 tiny bristles. Most of the bristles are chemoreceptors. The moths can smell a female's perfume nearly 7 miles 11 kilometers away.
Why were tomatoes often called love apples and considered aphrodisiacs?
Tomatoes belong to the nightshade family. They were cultivated in Peru and introduced to Europe by Spanish explorers. Tomatoes were introduced to Italy from Morocco. So the Italian name for the fruit was Pomi d'amore, meaning apples of the Moors. The French called the tomato pommes d'amour, meaning apples of love. This latter name may have referred to the fact that tomatoes were thought to have aphrodisiac powers. Or it may have been a corruption of the Italian name. When tomato plants were first introduced to Europe, many people viewed them with suspicion. Since poisonous members of the nightshade family were commonly known. Although the tomato is neither poisonous nor an aphrodisiac. It took centuries for it to fully overcome its undeserved reputation.
Do migrating animals actually have magnetic crystals in their brains?
Scientists have long speculated that birds may have magnetic compasses that allow them to detect the Earth's magnetic field and thus determine directions. Experiments in which magnets were strapped to the heads of pigeons caused the birds to become disoriented. Although magnetic iron has been found in bacteria and a variety of animal tissues, none has been clearly linked with a magnetic sense.
How are GMO regulated?
In the United States, GMO are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and United States Department of Agriculture, USDA.
What is the relationship between metabolism and lifespan?
Several studies have concluded that a program maintaining proportions of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, but reducing the consumption of calories, can increase longevity. However, these conclusions have only been demonstrated in tropical guppy fish and the worm Sinorhabditis elegans. To date, there have been no large clinical studies that have demonstrated the value of this regimen for humans.
How many different types of neurons are found in nerve tissue?
There are three main types of neurons: sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons, also called association neurons. Sensory neurons conduct impulses from sensory organs, eyes, ears, surface of the skin, into the central nervous system. Motor neurons conduct impulses from the central nervous system to muscles or glands. Interneurons are neither sensory neurons nor motor neurons. They permit elaborate processing of information to generate complex behaviors. Interneurons comprise the majority of neurons in the central nervous system.
How is DNA related to the size of a cell?
The amount of DNA that a cell must accommodate is significant. Even for organisms with genomes of modest size. There is enough DNA in the typical E. coli cell to encircle it more than 400 times. A typical human cell contains enough DNA to wrap around the cell more than 15,000 times.
What is the average size of a gene?
The average size of a vertebrate gene is about 30,000 base pairs. Bacteria, because their sequences contain only coding material, have smaller genes of about 1,000 base pairs each. Human genes are in the 20,000 to 50,000 base pair range. Although sizes greater than 100,000 base pairs have been suggested as well.
Do humans show grooming behavior similar to that of other primates?
Grooming is an important tool in cementing social relationships among primates. In studies of non-human primates, grooming, which is used ostensibly to remove external or ectoparasites, most often occurs between close relatives. In humans, grooming is also used as a relationship builder. Although humans will groom non-relatives as well.
How does the cuticle protect plants?
The cuticle contains a waxy substance, called cutin, that covers the parts of the plant exposed to the air, the stem and leaves. It is relatively impermeable and provides a barrier to water loss, thus protecting the plant from desiccation.
How is the peripheral nervous system organized in vertebrates?
There are two divisions to the peripheral nervous system, the sensory division and the motor division. The sensory division has two sets of neurons. One set, from the eyes, ears, and other external sense organs, brings in information about the outside environment, while the other set supplies the central nervous system with information about the body itself, such as the acidity of the blood, The motor division includes the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system carries signals to skeletal muscles and skin, mostly in response to external stimuli. It controls voluntary actions. The neurons of the autonomic nervous system are involuntary. This latter system is further divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. The sympathetic division prepares the body for intense activities. It is responsible for the fight or flight response. The parasympathetic division, or housekeeper system, is involved in all responses associated with a relaxed state such as digestion.
Where do transcription and translation take place?
In bacteria, the process of protein synthesis takes place in the cytoplasm. As bacteria lack a nucleus or other membrane-bound organelles. In eukaryotes, transcription occurs in the nucleus. From there the mRNA moves into the cytoplasm, where it is translated into a polypeptide at a ribosome.
How do fungi cause trees to become hollow?
Trees with hollow interiors are a familiar sight in parks, forests, and throughout urban areas. Fungal decay is often the cause of the hollowing of the trees. Wood-decaying fungi can enter a tree following a wound to the tree. The tree will produce a band of cells that tries to resist the formation of decay directly around the wound. The fungus that has entered the tree through the wood will continue to decay the inner lichens. Like the yellow lichen shown here, are often used as natural dyes and in the perfume and cosmetic industries. Wood, while the wood protected by the band of cells will continue to be sound. Hollow trees are also formed by fungi that solely attack the hardwood of a tree. This is most commonly observed in older coniferous trees of the Pacific coast of North America, reaching from California to Alaska. Heart rot fungi can enter a tree either through a wound or through small branch stubs. It decays the inner wood, resulting in a weak tree that is susceptible to damage by strong winds.
How quickly do bacteria reproduce?
In a favorable environment, bacteria can reproduce very rapidly. Favorable circumstances include laboratory cultures or the natural habitat. For example, under optimal conditions, Escherichia coli can divide every 20 minutes. A laboratory culture started with a single cell can produce a colony of 107 to 108 bacteria in about 12 hours.
What is the difference between a reptile and an amphibian?
Reptiles are clad in scales, shields, or plates, and their toes have claws. Amphibians have moist, glandular skins, and their toes lack claws. Reptile eggs have a thick, hard, or parchment-like shell that protects the developing embryo from moisture loss, even on dry land. The eggs of amphibians lack this protective outer covering and are always laid in water or in damp places. Young reptiles are miniature replicas of their parents in general appearance, if not always in coloration and pattern. Juvenile amphibians pass through a larval, usually aquatic, stage before they metamorphose, change in form and structure, into the adult form. Reptiles include alligators, crocodiles, turtles, and snakes. Amphibians include salamanders, toads, and frogs.
What is the largest leech?
Most leeches are between 75 in and 2 in, 2 and 6 centimeters, in length, but some medicinal leeches reach 8 in, 20 centimeters. The giant of all leeches is the Amazonian Haemonteria gillanii, from the Greek term haimataros, meaning bloody, which reaches 12 in, 30 centimeters, in length.
What is DNA methylation?
DNA methylation is a modification of DNA in which methyl, CH3 groups are added to certain positions on the nitrogen bases. In bacteria, adenine and cytosine are commonly methylated, while in eukaryotic cells, cytosine is most commonly methylated. In eukaryotic cells, methylation is a method of inhibiting gene expression.
What is the homunculus theory?
Illustrations from the late 17th century depict sperm containing a miniaturized adult. This preformed human was called a homunculus. It was thought at that time that the sperm, and its homunculus, contained all of the traits for building a baby and that the egg and womb served simply as incubators.
Can animals regenerate parts of their bodies?
Regeneration occurs in a wide variety of animals, however. It progressively declines as the animal species becomes more complex. Regeneration frequently occurs among primitive invertebrates. For example, a planarian, flatworm, can split symmetrically, with the two sides turning into clones of one another. In higher invertebrates, regeneration occurs in echinoderms, such as starfish, and arthropods such as insects and crustaceans. Starfish are known for their ability to develop into complete individuals from one cut-off arm. Regeneration of appendages, limbs, wings, and antennae, occurs in insects such as cockroaches, fruit flies, and locusts, and in crustaceans such as lobsters, crabs, and crayfish. For example, regeneration of a crayfish's missing claw occurs at its next molt. Shedding of its hard cuticle exterior shell/skin in order to grow, and the subsequent hardening of a new cuticle exterior. Sometimes the regenerated claw does not achieve the same size of the missing claw. However, after every molt, a process that occurs 2 to 3 times a year, the regenerated claw grows and will eventually become nearly as large as the original claw. On a very limited basis, some amphibians and reptiles can replace a lost leg or tail.
What is apical dominance?
Apical dominance is a phenomenon in which the terminal bud produces hormones inhibiting the growth of axillary buds. This allows the plant to grow taller, increasing its exposure to light. Under certain conditions, the axillary buds begin to grow, producing branches. When the terminal bud is pruned, pinched back, on house plants and fruit trees, axillary bud growth is stimulated, producing bushy, full-looking plants.
What is estivation?
Estivation, from the Latin term estes, meaning summer, is a process by which animals become dormant during the summer rather than the winter. Estivation may be used as a survival strategy against intense heat. Ground squirrels, drought, snails, or both. The Colombian ground squirrel both hibernates and estivates, beginning its dormant period in the late summer and continuing it until the next May.
What plant produces the largest seed cones?
The largest seed cones are produced by cycads. They may be up to 1 yard 1 meter in length and weigh more than 3.3 pounds 15 kilograms.
How does one distinguish between thorns, spines, and prickles?
Thorns are modified branches or stems arising from the axils of leaves. One purpose of thorns is to protect the plant from grazing animals. Hawthorn trees are an example of a plant with true thorns. Spines are modified leaves such as those found on cactus plants. Prickles are sharp outgrowths from the epidermis of various plant structures including leaves and stems.
Do all animals use imprinting?
Imprinting is a prime example of the relative influence of nature, genes, and nurture, environment, on behavior. The organism is born with a sketchy outline of an object, parent, reproductive partner, drawn from its genetic component, and this is then filled in by its experiences in the environment. Therefore, while not all species have been found to meet the scientific definition of imprinting, it is highly likely that all animals will exhibit at least some behaviors that combine genetic and environmental influences.
What are the functions of trichomes?
Trichomes have many functions. They help increase the rate of water absorption and reduce the rate of water loss due to evaporation in order to keep the leaf surface cool. Trichomes also provide a defense against insects. Since the hairiness of the leaf impedes insect infestation, glandular or secretory hairs provide a chemical defense against potential herbivores.
What significance did De Materia Medica, written by the Greek physician Dioscorides, have?
De Materia Medica, about medicinal materials, was written by the Greek physician Dioscorides, ca. 40 to 90 CE, in the 1st century CE. The manuscript included the names and uses of the 600 plants that, at the time, were known to have medicinal properties. The purpose of the publication was to improve medical service in the Roman Empire. In addition to its medical use, it became the book most often used for plant classification in the Western world for nearly 1,500 years. During the 15th and 16th centuries, European botanists and physicians used De Materia Medica to formulate their herbals, illustrated books on the presumed medicinal uses of plants.
How does a transmission electron microscope differ from a scanning electron microscope?
The electrons used to visualize the specimens in transmission. Electron microscopes are transmitted by the material. The scanning electron microscope beams the electrons onto the surface of the specimen from a fine probe that passes back and forth rapidly. Electrons reflected back from the surface of the specimen, along with other electrons emitted by the specimen itself, are amplified and transmitted to a television screen for viewing.
How many vertebrae are in the neck of a giraffe?
A giraffe neck has 7 vertebrae, the same as other mammals, but the vertebrae are greatly elongated.
What products are produced by fermentation?
Fermentation is important in the production of wine, beer, soy sauce, baked products, and pickles.
What are the functions of the root system?
The major functions of roots are: 1. Anchorage in soil. 2. Storage of energy resources such as the carrot and sugar beet. 3. Absorption of water and minerals from the soil. And 4. Conduction of water and minerals to and from the shoot. The roots store the food, energy resources, of the plant. The food is either used by the roots themselves or digested, and the products of digestion are transported back up through the phloem to the above ground portions of the plant. The roots of some plants are harvested as food for human consumption. Plant hormones are synthesized in the meristematic regions of the roots and transported upward in the xylem to the aerial part of the plant to stimulate growth and development.
When was a chemical disinfectant first used during a surgical procedure?
The use of a chemical disinfectant during a surgical procedure was first documented at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary in March 1865. Before surgery on a patient, Joseph Lister, 1827 to 1912. Sprayed the air with a fine mist of the phenol carbolic acid and soaked his surgical instruments in a carbolic acid solution. Although the patient later died, Lister continued his experiments. In an 1867 article in The Lancet, it was reported that Lister's postoperative surgery mortality rate dropped from 45% to 9% after he started to use chemical disinfectants in operative settings.
Why do cats swish their tails?
A cat's tail is a means of communication and can represent a range of moods. Every cat owner is familiar with the slow sweep of a cat's tail from side to side. A happy cat will greet you with a tail raised high, while a slight movement indicates pleasure and or anticipation. As the cat becomes more hunter-like, the flick of the tip becomes first a twitch and then a thrashing. At this point the cat is highly engaged and likely to pounce.
What are the only sessile crustaceans?
Barnacles are the only sessile, permanently attached to one location, crustaceans. They were described by the 19th century naturalist Louis Agassiz, 1807 to 1873. As nothing more than a little shrimp-like animal standing on its head in a limestone house and licking food into its mouth. Accumulations of barnacles may become so great that the speed of a ship may be reduced by 30% to 40%, necessitating dry docking the ship to remove the barnacles.
Who introduced electrophoresis as an analytical technique?
Electrophoresis was introduced in 1937 by Arndt Salius, 1902 to 1971. A Swedish biochemist. His work pioneered the use of electrophoretic methods to separate chemically similar proteins of blood serum.
How long have cockroaches been on the earth?
The earliest cockroach fossils are about 280 million years old. Cockroaches, order Dictyoptera, are nocturnal scavenging insects that eat not only human food but book bindings, ink, and whitewash as well.
Are all mutations bad?
No, all mutations are not bad. Although people may use the term mutant in a disparaging manner. Mutations are important to a population's gene pool because of the variation they contribute. Without mutations, there would be no variations and, following along Darwin's thinking, no natural selection.
What are examples of growth factors that affect cell division?
In order for a cell to grow, it must have specific nutrients. Some cells may require a messenger referred to as a growth factor to stimulate growth. There are several classes of proteins known as growth factors, which may also influence other cell activities, including embryonic development and response to tissue injury.
Why is it necessary to fix a biological specimen?
Fixing a biological specimen retains a reasonably good semblance of the object as it appeared when it was alive. It allows the scientists to observe details of the external and internal anatomy of the specimen.
Where are bryophytes found?
Mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, collectively known as bryophytes, are often found in moist environments. However, there are species that inhabit almost all environments. From hot, dry deserts to the coldest regions of Antarctica. They are most noticeable when they grow in a dense mass.
What club moss is called the resurrection plant?
Selaginella lepidophylla, found in the deserts of the southwestern United States and 170 Mexico. Is called the resurrection plant because of its ability to defy severe drought conditions. During periods of drought, this plant forms a tight, dried up ball. When rain comes, its branches expand, become green, and carry out photosynthesis.
What is the difference between DNA and RNA?
DNA and RNA are both nucleic acids formed from a repetition of simple building blocks called nucleotides. A nucleotide consists of a phosphate, PO4, sugar, and a nitrogen base, of which there are 5 types: adenine, A, thymine, T, guanine, G, cytosine, C, and uracil, U. In a DNA molecule, this basic unit is repeated in a double helix structure made from 2 chains of nucleotides linked between the bases. The links are either between A and T or between G and C. The structure of the bases does not allow other kinds of links. RNA is also a nucleic acid, but it consists of a single chain. And the sugar is ribose rather than deoxyribose. The bases are the same except that the thymine, T, in DNA is replaced by another base called uracil, U, which also links to adenine, A.
What are the advantages of seed dormancy?
The time during which a seed is dormant. When growth and development do not occur, allows for the dispersal of seeds. The plant can send its seeds into new environments. Dormancy assures survival of the plant since germination does not occur until conditions are favorable for plant growth.
How has the classification of bacteria evolved?
Early systems for classifying bacteria were based on structural and morphological elements displayed by the organisms, i.e., shape, size, and the presence or absence of several elements capsules. Photosynthetic or non-photosynthetic capabilities, flagella, endospores, etc. Other approaches relied on differential stains such as the Gram stain. More recently, genetic and molecular characteristics have been employed to reflect true evolutionary relatedness.
What is gene therapy?
Gene therapy involves replacement of an abnormal disease-causing gene with a normal gene. The normal gene is delivered to target cells using a vector, which is usually a virus that has been genetically engineered to carry human DNA. The virus genome is altered to remove disease-causing genes and insert therapeutic genes. Target cells are infected with the virus. The virus then integrates its genetically altered material containing the human gene into the target cell, where it should produce a functional protein product.
Which fiber has the longest fiber cells?
Rami, Baemerianavia, has the longest fiber cells with lengths of more than 12 in, 30 centimeters, long. Often used in fabric, these fibers are also stronger than cotton fibers.
What are the three main types of skeletal systems?
The three main types of skeletal systems are hydrostatic skeleton, exoskeleton, and endoskeleton. A hydrostatic skeleton consists of fluid under pressure. This type of skeletal system is most common in soft, flexible animals such as hydras, planarians, and earthworms and other segmented worms. Hydras and planarians have a fluid-filled gastrovascular cavity. The body cavity, or chylome, of an earthworm is also fluid-filled. Many aquatic and certain terrestrial animals have an exoskeleton. The exoskeleton is rigid and hard. Mollusks have an exoskeleton made of calcium carbonate. It grows with the animal during its entire lifetime. Another type of exoskeleton common among insects and arthropods is made from chitin. Chitin is a strong flexible nitrogenous polysaccharide. While it provides excellent protection and allows for a large variety of movements, it does not grow with the animal. When an animal outgrows its skeleton, it must shed its skeleton and replace it with a larger one in a process known as molding. An endoskeleton consists of bone and cartilage and grows with the animal throughout its life. It stores calcium salts and blood cells and consists of hard or leathery supporting elements situated among the soft tissues of an animal. Although most common among vertebrates, certain invertebrates such as sponges, sea stars, sea urchins, and other echinoderms have an endoskeleton of hard plates beneath their skin. This type of skeletal system allows for a wider range of movement than do the other two.
Who proposed that the left side of the brain has different functions than the right side of the brain?
Roger Sperry, 1913 to 1994, conducted the pioneering research on the different functions of the left side and right side of the brain. The left side of the brain controls language, logic, and mathematical abilities. In contrast, the right side of the brain is associated with imagination, spatial perception, artistic and musical abilities, and emotions. Sperry received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981 for his work.
Which animals are most demanding as pets?
There are several ways to answer this question. Physically, animals with very precise feeding requirements could be considered most demanding. An example would be the type of live food that a snake requires. On the other hand, animals with high learning capacity and communication skills can be quite exhausting for the owner. For many people, the physical and/or mental challenges of keeping a high maintenance pet like a chimpanzee or tiger can become overwhelming. Which is why so many exotic pets wind up being abandoned or given up for adoption.
Which is more common, endomycorrhiza or ectomycorrhiza?
Both endomycorrhiza and ectomycorrhiza have the ability to be mycorrhizal fungi. In endomycorrhiza, the hyphae of the fungus penetrate the outer cells of the plant root and extend into the surrounding soil. In ectomycorrhiza, the hyphae surround but do not penetrate the roots. Endomycorrhiza are much more common than ectomycorrhiza. The fungal component of endomycorrhiza is a zygomycete. While only about 30 species of zygomycetes are known to be involved in endomycorrhizal relationships. The zygomycetes are associated with more than 200,000 species of plants. Basidiomycetes are the most common fungal component of ectomycorrhiza. Although some ascomycetes also form ectomycorrhizal relationships. More species of fungi are involved in ectomycorrhiza, at least 5,000. But most are only associated with a single species of plant. Furthermore, the total number of plants involved in ectomycorrhiza is limited to a few thousand.
How fast does a hummingbird fly, and how far does the hummingbird migrate?
Hummingbirds fly at speeds up to 71 miles per hour, 114 kilometers per hour. Small species beat their wings 50 to 80 times per second, higher in courtship displays. For comparison, the following table lists the flight speeds of some other birds. The longest migratory flight of a hummingbird documented to date is the flight of a rufous hummingbird from Ramsey Canyon, Arizona, to near Mt. St. Helens, Washington, a distance of 1,414 miles 2,277 kilometers. Bird banding studies are now in progress to verify that a few rufous hummingbirds do make a 11,000 to 11,500 miles, 17,699 to 18,503 kilometers. Journey along a super Great Basin high route, a circuit that could take a year to complete. Hummingbird studies, however, are difficult to complete because so few banded birds are recovered.
How is the light in fireflies produced?
The light produced by fireflies, Photinus pyroles, or lightning bugs, is a kind of heatless light called bioluminescence. It is caused by a chemical reaction in which the substance Luciferin undergoes oxidation when the enzyme luciferase is present. The flash is a photon of visible light that radiates when the oxidating chemicals produce a high energy state, which then reverts back to the normal state. The flashing is controlled by the nervous system and takes place in special cells called photocytes. The nervous system, photocytes, and the tracheal end organs control the flashing rate. The air temperature also seems to be correlated with the flashing rate. The higher the temperature, the shorter the interval between flashes, 8 seconds at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. 18.3 degrees Celsius, and 4 seconds at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 27.7 degrees Celsius. Scientists are uncertain as to why this flashing occurs. The rhythmic flashes could be a means of attracting prey or enabling mating fireflies to signal in heliographic codes that differ from one species to another, or they could serve as a warning signal.
What is the major function of the nucleus?
The nucleus is the information center for the cell and the storehouse of the genetic information. DNA, that directs all of the activities of a living eukaryotic cell. It is usually the largest organelle in a eukaryotic cell and contains the chromosomes.
Do animal studies predict human behavior?
George Romanes, 1848 to 1894, was one of the first scientists to investigate the comparative psychology of intelligence. He believed that by studying animal behavior, one could gain insights into human behavior. However, his theory was based on inferences rather than direct observations of comparable behavior.
What other tree species has been adversely affected by a fungus?
Elm trees are susceptible to the fungus Ophiostoma ulmi, which causes Dutch elm disease. The fungus lives in the tubular cells present in the outermost wood of trees. As the cells become plugged, water and nutrients are not able to move from the roots to the top of a tree, and eventually the tree dies.
Do possums play dead?
The common or Virginia opossum, Didelphis virginiana, is the only marsupial in the southern and eastern portions of the United States. When threatened or frightened, the opossum will lie quite still with stiffened limbs and a fixed gaze, appearing as if dead. When the perceived threat is over, the opossum will return to its normal, nocturnal activities.
What is the generation time for various bacteria?
Generation time is defined as the time required for a bacterial population to double in its number. If a culture tube is inoculated with one cell that divides every 20 minutes, the total cell population will grow to 2 cells after a period of 20 minutes. And 4 cells after 40 minutes, the growth will continue at this rate.
What is a polytene chromosome?
When DNA replication takes place without subsequent cell division, polytene chromosomes may result. These are giant chromosomes comprised of multiple chromatids. Identical chromosome copies, arranged together like strands of a large cable. They are commonly found in the salivary glands of the fruit fly, Drosophila melanogaster, and are regions of active transcription.
What is the difference between a food chain and a food web?
A food chain refers to transfer of energy from producers through herbivores through carnivores in a community. An example of a food chain would be little fishes eating plankton, and those little fishes in turn being eaten by bigger fishes. The term food web is broader, as it includes interconnected food chains within a specific ecosystem. Perhaps the bigger fishes eat the plankton as well. A food web describes a nutritional portrait of the ecosystem. In 1927, Charles Elton, 1868 to 1945, was one of the first scientists to diagram a food web. In his case, a description of feeding relationships on Bear Island in the Arctic.
What are telomeres and where are they located?
Telomeres are protective structures composed of DNA that contain multiple repetitions of one short nucleotide sequence instead of genes. They are found at each end of a eukaryotic chromosome.
How does an antibiotic affect protein synthesis?
Antibiotics can slow or shut down protein synthesis in bacteria. There are about 160 known antibiotics, and each acts differently and selectively. Depending on the type of bacterial infection. As an example, streptomycin inhibits initiation of protein synthesis by interfering with final formation of the two subunits of a bacterial ribosome.
What is photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis, from the Greek word photo, meaning light, and synthesis, from the Greek word syntythene, which means to put together, is the process by which plants use Energy derived from light in order to make food molecules from carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis is a dual-staged process with multiple components. Light reactions or light-dependent reactions compose the first steps of photosynthesis. During the light reactions, light energy derived from sunlight is converted to chemical energy. Oxygen, O2, is produced as a waste product of this process. The steps of the second stage are the carbon fixation reactions known as the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is a series of reactions that assemble sugar molecules from carbon dioxide, CO2, and the energy-containing products of the light reactions. Carbon fixation is the conversion of carbon dioxide, CO2, into organic compounds.
How is DNA organized in the nucleus?
Within the nucleus, DNA is organized with proteins into a fibrous material called chromatin. As a cell prepares to divide or reproduce, the thin chromatin fibers condense, becoming thick enough to be seen as separate structures, which are called chromosomes.
What are the main features of vascular plants?
Vascular plants have leaves, roots, cuticles, stomata, specialized stems, tissues that conduct efficiently, and, in most cases, seeds. Their sporophytes are large, dominant, and nutritionally independent.
How many Golgi bodies are in a cell?
Protists contain one or a small number of Golgi bodies. Animal cells may contain 20 or more Golgi bodies, while plant cells may contain several hundred Golgi bodies.
What is the fastest snake on land?
The black mamba, Dendroaspis polylepis, a deadly poisonous African snake that can grow up to 13 feet. 4 m, in length, has been recorded reaching a speed of 7 miles per hour, 11 kilometers per hour. A particularly aggressive snake, it chases animals at high speeds, holding the front of its body above the ground.
What is polygyny?
Polygyny is a type of mating system that involves pair bonds between one male and several females. While this may at first seem unfair to females, in a polygynous system every female can usually have a mate, while only the most desirable males will find a mate.
Who first won the Nobel Prize for work on animal behavior?
although there is no specific Nobel Prize for the study of animal behavior. The first prize to be awarded for the scientific study of animal behavior was awarded jointly in 1973 in the category Physiology or Medicine to Konrad Lorenz. 1903 to 1989, Carl von Frisch, 1886 to 1982, and Nico Tinbergen, 1907 to 1988. Each ethologist had a main research area for which he was well known, Lorenz for imprinting behavior of birds, von Frisch for the dance of the honeybees, and Tinbergen for aggressive behavior of stickleback fish.
Can genetic engineering be used to save endangered species?
As endangered species disappear from natural habitats and are only found in zoos, researchers are looking for ways to conserve these species. Using cryopreservation, the Zoological Society of San Diego has created a frozen zoo that stores viable cell lines from more than 3,200 individual mammals, birds, and reptiles, representing 355 species and subspecies. Researchers maintain that there should still be continued efforts to preserve species in their natural habitats. But by preserving and studying animal DNA, scientists can learn genetic aspects crucial to the species' survival.
What main carbohydrate is stored by fungi?
The main carbohydrate stored by fungi is glycogen, which is also the main storage carbohydrate of animals. This fact suggests that fungi are more closely related to animals than plants, which store starch as their main carbohydrate.
What are adventitious roots?
Adventitious roots, from the Latin term adventitious, meaning not belonging to, are roots that form on organs other than roots, such as a leaf or stem. In some plants, adventitious roots are a means of vegetative propagation, such as for raspberries, apples, and cabbage.
What is the p53 gene?
The p53 protein interferes with tumor growth and is 53 kilodaltons in length. It is found in increased amounts in cells that have undergone treatment, such as radiation, that damages DNA. The gene that codes for this tumor suppressor is known as the p53 gene. Mutations that inactivate this gene are found in the majority of all human tumors.
What is proteomics?
Proteomics is the study of proteins encoded by a genome. This field extends the Human Genome Project and is a far more complex study than finding where genes are located on chromosomes. Proteins are dynamic molecules that can change according to the needs of a cell. And complete understanding of cell metabolism requires that scientists understand all of the proteins involved as well as their genes.
Why did sexual reproduction evolve?
The appearance and maintenance of energetically expensive traits like sexual reproduction will occur only if there is a net benefit to the fitness of individuals with those traits. There are costs to sexual reproduction, for example. Finding a mate can demand considerable time and energy. More importantly, individuals engaging in sexual reproduction only pass on half of their genes to each offspring. So their fitness is half that of asexually reproducing individuals. Scientists have examined the costs and benefits of sexual reproduction and determined that it is most likely to have evolved as a way to maintain genetic diversity. Experiments have shown that populations in erratic environments or those who are reproductively isolated from the rest of their species are at an advantage when they reproduce sexually rather than asexually. By being able to mix and match alleles, individuals within these populations can maintain genetic diversity and phenotypic variation, expanding their toolkit as a hedge against an unpredictable future.
How does brown fat differ from white fat?
Many mammals have both brown adipose tissue and white adipose tissue. They are both triglyceride lipids, but brown fat tissue has the ability to generate heat. Although called brown, it varies in color from dark red to tan, reflecting lipid content. It is most commonly found in newborn animals and in most species disappears by adulthood.
What is the largest group of insects that have been identified and classified?
The largest group of insects that has been identified and classified is the order Coleoptera. Beetles, weevils, and fireflies, with some 350,000 to 400,000 species. Beetles are the dominant form of life on Earth, as one of every 5 living species is a beetle.